Hey there, my wedding planning friends, and welcome back to my channel. If this is your first time here, thank you so much for clicking on my video. I'm Emily Summer. I'm a wedding planner based in Montana, and I make weekly videos on wedding planning tips and advice. So today's video, we're talking all about wedding florals and specifically 12 do's and don'ts when it comes to flowers at your wedding. Number one, I've talked about this before, but don't DIY more than you are experienced with or prepared for when it comes to your wedding flowers. Flowers are one of those things that are probably going to take up a large part of your decor and likely your decor budget as well. So I totally understand wanting to cut costs there and DIYing where you can. There are ways you can DIY flowers, which I've got videos all about this. So I'm not going to go too deep into this topic in this video, but there are ways that you can DIY flowers without doing all of your flowers DIY, especially if you don't have a lot of experience with it. It takes much longer than you think it's going to take, and it can be a lot more frustrating than you might think it would be as well. So kind of eliminate that stress for yourself and only DIY what you feel comfortable with. Typically, this is like easy bud vase arrangements and not your ceremony flowers or your bouquets. Number two, if you are DIYing or buying in bulk and doing some bulk flowers for your centerpieces, bud vases, things like that, don't wait until the wedding day to process these flowers. And what I mean by process is to make sure that the stems are going to be useful so that each individual flower looks good, they're not wilted, there aren't petals that you need to peel off, and you're trimming them to whatever length they need to be put into their arrangements. This can take a really long time depending on how many flowers you have, and this is something that I see a lot of couples not account for or plan for when it comes to buying bulk flowers or DIYing their flowers. So make sure that if you are doing this, you are taking the day or two before your wedding day to go through and process all these flowers. Number three, bud vases are great, but know when to use them and when to go for a different route for centerpieces. Bud vases work fabulously on rectangle tables, especially if you are having full place settings that are going to be kind of busy on the tables. You can use bud vases for round tables, but it tends to be a little bit more difficult to do this and you need a lot more. So you're not really saving that much money if you are planning on just doing bud vases on a round table. Typically, if you are doing this, they're good as fillers so that you are having maybe hurricane pillar candles, tall candles, some other kind of centerpiece on the table and not solely doing bud vases for the only centerpiece where it feels a little bit empty. Number four, if you are having an outdoor wedding or any part of your wedding outdoors and it's warm, don't put your outside flowers out too early. So you want to be putting flowers that are going to go out at your bar, cocktail tables for cocktail hour, ceremony flowers. These should all be done towards as close as possible to when your wedding is going to begin so that they aren't just sitting outside in the sun. Number five, use flowers that are in season. So not only is this going to be more cost effective for you and your overall flower budget, but it's also more sustainable and will help kind of tie in your surroundings better for your overall theme of your wedding. So try and use as many flowers that are in season or local to your space as possible, and this is going to be a great way to keep your floral budget as low as possible. Number six, this is my own personal professional opinion, but pay the extra delivery fee for your florist to actually come on site and do the delivery and do the install, especially if you are having any sort of arch arrangements or hanging installations of any kind. If you are having only vases, only flowers that are self-sustaining, that they don't need to be hung or attached to anything, then you can get away with doing more a la carte services and just have somebody pick up those flowers. But if you are having any sort of install, I highly, highly, highly recommend having your florist come and professionally do it. That way you are ensuring that everything is going to be secured not only properly, but also aesthetically pleasing and in a way that's going to sustain any weather elements that might arise. So I have seen couples that will pick up flower arrangements for the arch that just come with zip ties and you just have to attach it yourself. And yes, in theory, you can do that yourself. But if a big wind gust comes up and it's not attached in the exact way that a professional florist would, there's a chance that it won't be as secure and it might fall down during your wedding ceremony or just not look as great for your photos as it would if you have a professional doing that for you. Number 7, do look up inspiration for your wedding flowers, but don't try and copy completely what you are seeing from those photos. So don't find inspiration photos and send them to your florist and say, this is exactly what I want for my wedding. And you shouldn't try to copy flower inspiration for a multitude of reasons, but primarily because you are hiring your florist to be an artist and you want them to be able to create something that is tailored to kind of their own personal style and have their own touch on it so that your wedding has its own touch on it. You don't really want to be creating something that is completely cookie cutter, exactly like something else that you've already seen. But also, you can't really guarantee that wherever you are getting married and whatever flowers you are getting from that local florist is going to be able to perfectly emulate a photo that you saw on the internet, because for one, you don't know where that was taken. You don't know which flowers, where those flowers were sourced, if they were locally, if they were, transported in from somewhere else. There's no way to really completely copy flower arrangements that you see elsewhere. So you shouldn't have that in your mind of trying to completely recreate something you see online. So use photos for inspiration. Don't try and copy anything exactly. Number 8, don't use sensitive flowers in outdoor arrangements or anything without a water source. So this is primarily like hydrangeas are super, super sensitive to not only the heat, but also to lack of water. Same with lilacs. Both of these are very, very sensitive. So highly recommend not using them in any of your bouquets, especially your bridal bouquet, because that is something that will be outside of a water source pretty consistently throughout your day. And definitely don't use any in any outdoor arrangements, especially if it's a summer or warm weather wedding day. Number 9, similarly, do keep bouquets in a water source whenever you're not using them, but don't forget to dry the stems. So you want to keep your bridal bouquet and your bridesmaids bouquets in water vases when you're not using them for photos. Just make sure that you have a towel on hand, paper towel or a cloth towel, to dry those stems so that you aren't dripping on your dress or on bridesmaids' dresses when you go to take your photos. Number 10, think about your dress when it comes to choosing your flowers. So it probably won't totally dictate your wedding flowers, but depending on your wedding dress, this might influence potentially the shape of your bridal bouquet or maybe specific flowers that you're using. If you have any flower patterns, floral laces, or anything floral related on your dress, you want to make sure that the flowers that you have in your bridal bouquet aren't going to clash with that. And also consider the size of your bouquet depending on what your wedding dress has detail-wise, because in a lot of your photos, walking down the aisle, a lot of your wedding day, you're going to be carrying your bridal bouquet and you don't want that to be hiding a particularly prominent piece on your wedding dress. So if you have a pretty simple wedding dress, but you have beautiful detail just in the bodice, you don't want a bouquet that's going to be hiding that all day. So just kind of keep that in mind as you're designing your bridal bouquet. Number 11, don't put centerpieces that are going to be blocking guests' view of either each other or of wherever the action is happening, wherever you guys are. So when it comes to centerpieces, have them either really short or really tall so that you're able to see through them and guests aren't having this obstruction right in the middle of their table, so that they can comfortably talk to people that are across from them, but also not blocking their view of anything else that's happening. And finally, number 12, don't use a big garland for a centerpiece if you have a little bit of more narrow tables or if you have full place settings, if you have like a charger, dinner plate, multiple glasses, full place or full flatware setup. It gets very, very crowded, and these garlands tend to spill into cups, spill over plates, and it just isn't that sanitary and just looks and feels very crowded. I also don't recommend using garland if you are planning on serving anything family style, because this becomes in the way of being able to set platters down that you're going to need that space on the table for these platters and for any extra food items that are going to need to be on the table. Wedding flowers are a huge part of your wedding, and there are some do's and don'ts that you should consider when planning for your wedding florals. Hopefully you found this video helpful. If you did, please like and subscribe to get weekly videos on wedding planning tips and advice, and we'll see you next week.